Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy. I'm your host, as always, and joining me to discuss, well, quite a lot in terms of Rangers' exploits in Europe, and probably a little bit about the weather as well, as it is absolutely blowing a gale through here in West Lothian, and I'm fairly sure where he is as well, is my friend Grant Sneddon. Grant, thanks so much for coming on.
It's always a pleasure, Cammy, to talk all things Rangers with you. Thank you again for having me on. And yeah, it's been a very interesting day through in Falkirk area. As I'm sure you're aware, all the schools are shut at the moment. So the schools, of course, have given us work to do with our little ones. And for any of the listeners that are either teachers or are family members of teachers, the hats off to you all, because I do not know how you do this as a full-time profession. I have tapped out at 2:30. I am done. So hats off to you.
I thought my cat would be going crazy today, and she's sleeping sound as a pound. Absolutely not bothered by this whatsoever. So, unfortunately, I can't really relate to your teaching woes, I'm afraid, Grant. But listen, I'm sure you'll get through it, my friend. Listen, let's crack on to talk about what feels like, and for the wrong reasons, I think it might be saying, a really disappointing night at Old Trafford. Not because of the performance, not necessarily because of the result, because, I think getting into this game, I was not feeling overly optimistic. I thought it would be a challenge for us to go down to Old Trafford and play a Man United team that I know are not playing at their best. But I'm probably just disappointed in the manner of how we lost. A real gut punch as Rangers, through an absolute worldie by Cyril Dessers, got it back to 1-0 with a couple of minutes to go, and then up pops Bruno Fernandes in the second minute of injury time to seal the win for Man U. Grant, how are you feeling the day after?
Guide, I think, is really representative of how I'm feeling, and I'm sure the wider support are feeling as well, Cammy, because everything you've said is spot on. We were talking on one of our shows on our Patreon network on Monday morning and what our feelings were going into the game, and surprisingly I felt not confident, but there was a sense of optimism going into the game because of how Man United are playing, especially at home. If you look at the home results over the last couple of games that we've been playing, they've been taken apart by Brighton, they've been taken apart by Bournemouth. Now, teams who obviously play a bit of a different style to ourselves, but the opportunities were going to be there for us because this is a team that is low in confidence. The manager has publicly came out and slated them as Manchester United's worst ever team going into the game. So, on the face of things, this is a team that were kind of almost at rock bottom. So, you do start to think, and the mind starts to wander off into, I wonder if we will actually have a better opportunity to go to Old Trafford and do ourselves justice. And look, if you go back to the game in the 2010-2011 season, you could say that in terms of the result, we done ourselves justice. But last night, you mentioned the performance. I think on the whole, the team can actually look back and say, we have done ourselves justice. We'll maybe talk about individual players who didn't do themselves justice, perhaps. But on the whole, it was really pleasing to see. And going into that last couple of minutes, you couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to get a point from the game. Or I would be amazed to find out how many people actually thought we could have went on and got a winner with the momentum that we would have gained through Desser's equaliser. But look, overall, going into the game, it was a bit of a free hit because of where we were in terms of qualification for the the knockout phase of this newly formed league phase. But overall, yeah, it is a bit of a gut punch, as you say.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because you take into account, all of those variables, that you mentioned, and also Rangers in Europe on a Thursday night is just, the unknown within itself. Let's get on to the game, Grant. And, Rangers, I thought, a little bit sloppy in the opening minutes of the game with the ball. Our passing could have been a little bit better. And you know that in games at this level against opposition of this quality, the most important thing you have to be able to do is, remain focused, not give the ball away cheaply. Rangers did that a couple of times. However, we managed to kind of turn it on a little bit, and somewhat bizarrely, within about 12 minutes of the game starting, Rangers quite easily could have found themselves 2 goals up. A great through ball by Egeman through to Raskan. His second touch is just a little bit awkward, takes the ball away from him and kind of kills the chance. Yilmaz unlucky as well with a shot as well, which again on another day goes in. And I think that at this point it started to signify that Rangers, we weren't there to simply just take part. We were there to make sure that we could impress ourselves upon this. And Man United, I'm not going to show that Man United would disrespect us in any way, saying this should have been shooty in. But I think they certainly got a little bit of a kind of early round jab to just remind themselves that actually Rangers were not there simply for the glamour of playing at Old Trafford. We were there to do what we could and impress ourselves upon it. And those 2 chances, had they gone in, I mean, it's akin to away at Dortmund, I think, in terms of just the absolute shock. But yeah, very unlucky with both of them.
Yeah, early parts of the game, you can see that United tried to isolate Garnacho in that sort of 1v1 situation because they realised quite early, with the way that they set up in this sort of 3-4-3 formation, that they were going to get overlaps all the time and 2v1 situations. So that sort of early spell, they could have led to them thinking, right, if we just do this enough times, we're going to get opportunities. But as you say, worked our way back into it. And out of the 2 opportunities, Cammy, the Raskin one is the most frustrating one, because for me, and look, this is totally in hindsight that I have this opinion. This is an opinion that I formed after watching the game back and taking the emotion of last night away from it. I don't think he needs to take the second touch. His run is perfect. His first touch presents him the opportunity. The goalkeeper isn't set. The goalkeeper is moving himself into position to try and smother it. So if Raskin at that point even just toe pokes it in the direction that he came from, most likely he's going to score. So it's kind of frustrating that he feels he needs to take the second touch because, as you have rightly pointed out, it takes the opportunity away from him because it's not a clean touch. It's caught underneath his feet. He's then having to readjust his body position, his feet position him to try and get the shot away. Now, look, he still does well because he gets the shot away, but it's not anywhere near as effective if he had hit it after the first touch. And look, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on it, but I just feel that he didn't need to take it and he actually had a better opportunity if he just hit it after the first touch. The Yilmaz one, look, it's far too easy to say, oh, if it fell to someone else or if it fell, you want it to fall to anyone but him. Because at the end of the day, this is elite level football. You are expecting all players to have a certain level of technique. He does amazing because how many times have we seen players at all levels sky that over the bar or not even hit the target? It goes out for like a by kick or sometimes even a throw-in because they've misconnected with it entirely. He does really well. The criticism comes is that he chooses to go near post and not back across goal, because back across goal, I'm pretty sure you would agree with me, if he goes back across, he scores.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Ali McCoy, who was on co-coms for TNT last night, he was giving Yilmaz quite a bit of criticism on that because he had said Yilmaz tries to hit it with his side foot. And I think, to mention there what you said about technique, I think what Yilmaz is thinking at the time is he just wants to try and get a connection on it. And if he can hit it with enough power, then he's at least getting the shot away. But as you mentioned, it's like it's a controlled shot, which I get. And Ali was obviously saying, look, you've got to get a full flush contact on that, put your laces through it. Again, as you said, and as Ali was mentioning, try and hit it back across goal if you can take it for there. I'm not trying to necessarily defend Yilmaz in terms of his entire play across the game last night because I think that he wasn't fantastic, but I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway with this chance, Grant, because it's just I think it's just when he's in that situation and he has to be able to try and get something on it. Yeah, maybe another day he has another crack at it, and listen, it goes in. And as you said,
it's right though, Cammy. I'm not criticising him for going with his side foot rather than like full flush laces because he's probably, as you've said, thought I just need to make sure I hit the target here with it. So that's why he goes with a bit more control. But if he does the same technique but puts it away from the goalkeeper back to where it's come, as you're taught when you're coming through football, is if you can put it back to where it's coming from. If he does that with the same technique, then he scores. The technique's not the problem. It's just that little bit of care to realise what the situation is.
Yeah, fair. And listen, I don't want to overemphasise a point in terms of the Raskan chance, but if you swap the players round in that situation and that ball falls to Egaman, that's a goal. I have that much faith in him to be able to finish that.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? That's how good a player he is. Anyway, Man United, I think, did fair to get a grip of the game on this, Grant. There's a really good break by Garnacho. He comes inside, hits it, and Nico Raskin is doing his defensive duties at this stage and gets the ball over the bar. Saves a shot on target. However, from the resulting corner, Man United do score from it. De Ligt gets onto the end of the corner. There was a lot discussed in terms of the Man United approach to their set pieces and being able to do a little bit of the kind of back post overload in corners and then coming forward to the front post. Thankfully, Rangers were awarded a foul on Robin Proper. I like to be fair whenever we talk about these things. And if that had been at the other end and Rangers had had the goal chalked off for this level of foul, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think I would have been pretty raging. I do appreciate it's Europe and I do appreciate there's certainly hands in the back. It felt a bit to me, and I've watched it a couple of times since, but it felt a little bit to me that Proper almost kind of, it's like as if he bends his knees rather than going as a full flush fall forward. So how much contact was there, I don't know. However, Rangers, thankfully we did have the goal chalked off against us.
First viewing, I actually thought, I think the foul, if I remember correctly, was given against Lenny Yoro.
Yeah.
I thought at first viewing he has clipped Robin Proper's heel, and that's how he's fallen the way that he has. So it wasn't until the replay that I'm thinking, similar to yourself, he's went down in stages there a little bit. Like it's like he goes from like it's like his ankles give way, then his knees give way, and then body, which is incredibly weird. But yeah, look, I'm not going to sit here and go anything but being completely and utterly fair and completely and utterly honest. It's the soft category of foul, will we say? But the way that VAR is sort of instructed on it, there isn't enough to overturn it. So, like for example, if they had given the goal on the field of play, there's not enough to overturn it in the same sense. So it's whatever the referee has given at the time. Although I was actually a bit surprised it went to VAR because my understanding was that if the referee blows before, then they can't give the goal because it's not a penalty situation, which is like, remember when Dester scored against St Johnstone in the League Cup?
Yes.
Earlier on in the season, the referee signalled for a free kick, but he didn't blow, which is why I thought that was able to be overturned by VAR. But look, yeah, totally agree. It's a soft foul. If Proper or Balogun had scored a goal like that, we would all be honest enough to say we would be raging if it got disallowed.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But listen, I've spoken to plenty of people about it, and I've got some differing opinions on it. So I respect wherever you happen to land on it as well. Rangers, for the remainder of the kind of half, there was some chances for both Rangers and Man U. I think it's fair to say. One of the points that I've kind of got within looking through my notes of the game last night as well, Grant, was it probably took me until I would say about 40 minutes, I would say between 20 to 40 minutes, to actually remind myself that Nadeem Bajrami was on the park last night. I don't want to necessarily turn this into, a full-blown criticism of some of the players that were involved last night. And we are going to give plenty of praise to players who did have to come in. But it feels to me that when you've got a player who, albeit is not in a great run of form, hasn't really set the header on fire since his move. I understand all of those things. I also like to try and give players some degree of time to be able to try and bed in. Bajrami, we've tried a few different things with him in terms of playing him out on the left, then obviously bring him inside to the 10 role. I'm not convinced that that's worked, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the bare minimum for me that you can do is just make sure that you put yourself about. I don't mean sliding into tackles, by the way. I just mean pressing your man. If you have to close down, do so at speed. Just raise the tempo a little bit. And it just felt to me like Man United just were never, ever, pressured by him to play an earlier pass or know that they were going to get, harried by him to rush into being able to make a decision, potentially force an error. He was just so pedestrian, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I mentioned sort of in my opening that there was players last night who, if they were to look back on last night and ask themselves honestly, have I done myself justice here? He would be one of the players who should honestly say no, I didn't. And it was interesting watching the game because what I was trying to figure out is where is he meant to be off the ball? Because going back to United's sort of 3-4-3 formation, where we completely got swamped is Czerny and Tavernier didn't really know how high they needed to push on that right hand side because anytime the ball came to Martinez, you could see Czerny thinking, I really need to press him, but I need to stay in Dallo. But then, if he did press, Tavernier was like, I really need to press Dallo, but I need to stay in Garnacho. There was too many times where there was that sort of 3v1 situation, and then the same on the other side with Yoro, Ahmad as well. It was overloading, sometimes 3v2, sometimes 2v1. So I get the feeling that the idea of the ball is that Bajrami was supposed to press the wider centre half on the ball. So, like, if it went to the left, he should be the one who goes to press Martinez, which then allows Czerny to stay in Dallo and Tavernier to stay in Garnacho. Vice versa, if it comes to the right-hand side, he presses Yoro, and then that structure remains the same, and it's marked because it's 2v2 in the middle. But Bajrami didn't look as though he knew, or he was caught in two minds of where he should be. Should I stay in the middle to allow Barron to push out the way, Raskin to push out the way on the left-hand side? Or should I be the one to press the centre half of the ball? And far too many times, and how many times in the first half, Cammy, did you see Lenny Yoro like 20 yards away from our goal?
Just so much freedom and space as well at times, Jimmy.
Exactly, but that's because the spare man in this case was Bayrami. He has to be the one who presses the wide centre half of the ball, because everywhere else in the park is virtually 1v1 in man marking. So his role, ideally, should have been shut down the man coming out with the ball, which 9 times out of 10 was Yoro or Martinez, and then allow everyone else to go man mark. Didn't do it, which then caused far too many overloads and allowed chance, like you mentioned, Garnacho's chance where Raskin got in the way of it, comes from an overload. If you look at Diallo had a chance. The one where Fernandes slipped it through to Diallo, and then he tried to lift it over the top of Butland, comes from an overload again. So there was just that tactical breakdown of, and I feel it is in Bayrami's role because everyone else really had their men to mark. He has to be the one who then goes to the man in the free ball. And because he was caught in two minds or didn't really know where he was supposed to be, it caused us far too many problems. And really, there was a case for changing it after, say, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, because you had to address that issue. Otherwise, you felt a goal was going to come from it.
Yeah, no, that is fair. That is fair. Rangers did get to half-time, Grant, but there had to be a couple of forced changes. Connor Barron, who obviously was coming in for the suspended Mohamed Diamande, had to go off with what looked like quite a nasty... it was almost an overextension of the knee as he was going in for a tackle. I think it was with Fernandes. And Liam Balogun also had to go off. Looked like a roll in his ankle. There was no contact around him, no one else around him, but it's an ankle he has had issues with before. Both of them were replaced by Bailey Rice and Ross McCausland, with James Tavernier moving into centre half to replace Balogun. It's frustrating because we don't have our injury concerns to seek. Connor Barron, for me, started at Rangers beginning of the season incredibly brightly, went off the boil a little bit. Raskin has come in and dominated part of his position. Diamande absolutely has his uses within there. Barron, I feel for the boy because, again, given this opportunity, which he wouldn't have been starting if Diamande had been available. But, again, it's a big step for him. Games like this are the reason as to why he came to Rangers. And it's just it's a difficult one to take. Now, we don't know at time of recording the extent of the injuries. Hopefully, certainly the Balogun one, I'm hoping, is not too bad. I say that with a pinch of caution because we know that sometimes we do have to game manage Liam Balogun. Connor Barron, I'm hoping, although it did look like a sore one, again, shouldn't be too long. What this did do, from the positive angle, however, was give an opportunity to Bailey Rice, who, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, again, I don't think expected to play. But within a few minutes of the second half starting, Grant is presented with a great opportunity. I think this is only maybe his second touch of the ball at this stage, and he hits it over the top. We will talk about the players who come on in a little bit more detail shortly, but for Rice to come in and play the way he played throughout the remainder of the game, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I'm not suggesting for a single minute, by the way, that he was the best player in the park. I don't mean it like that. But what I'm saying to you is that in a Europa League game against Manchester United at Old Trafford, he did not look out of place.
No, he did. He really didn't, and that is a huge testament to Bailey because you mentioned it rightly there. It's an opportunity that only a couple of weeks ago he would never have dreamed about being on the pitch at Old Trafford. If you were to ask him, do you think you'll get a chance? There's only been the conversations in the last couple of weeks about the fact that he is going to become a fully fledged first team player, and then only really given the last, I think it was the last 30 minutes, if I remember correctly, last 30 minutes against Fraserburgh on Sunday, just past there. So for him to come in to a game like this, the way that the dynamic of the game was going as well, the fact that he was able to come on and perform with such a calm head and just really controlled and done the simple things right, Cammy. And how often do you see players who come into occasions like this and they hit a couple of 25, 30-yard cross field passes perfectly, but they misplace the simple 5-yard passes? I thought he done really well. He kept things simple. He kept things ticking when he needed to. He kept the ball when he had to. He wasn't afraid just to put his foot on it or pass it back to his centre halves. But he was able to break lines when he needed to as well. So I don't want to go over the top in praise for him, because you don't want to set players up to fall or label them as like something that they're not. But for him to come in, he's done himself proud. He has certainly done himself huge favours in being selected for the first team over the next couple of games, whether it be from the start, whether it be minutes off the pitch, off the bench, sorry. He's certainly done himself no harm in that. I'm amazed, though, just going back to the injury, I'm amazed Barron actually came back on, because you could see when they went in for the 50-50, you could sort of see his knee reverberate when
you could see the movement
was made, and you initially think to yourself, you're at the very best, your knee has locked there. If not, it's like the ligaments that are going to take a huge deal of that impact. So for him to come back on, I was actually quite amazed and wasn't shocked to see him go off at half time. Balogun one is hugely frustrating, because where we are in terms of defensive cover at the moment, it leaves us incredibly short. And you mentioned we might talk about transfers, and this could then factor into registration for the latter phase of it, because at the moment we've not got Clinton and Ciala registered. We do have a new centre back in, who I'm assuming we will register as well. So potentially there's 2 of the 3 places that you will need to just put the 2 in to make sure we have enough defensive cover coming in. And it is frustrating, because you count on experienced heads in games like this, and because of suspension, because of injuries, we were severely lacking in that department last night, and especially with Rice and laterally Finlay Curtis coming on the park, they could have done with that experience there. So, yeah, frustrating is the word for the Balogun injury.
Yeah, absolutely. Rangers, as I say, did start the second half brightly with that Bailey Rice shot, and also Lavclav Cherny, unlucky with a drive from his left foot, went down towards the keeper's left-hand post. Bruno Fernandes got a shot away, Grant, which was one of those ones where it came off Robin Proper, who in his defence had a brilliant block. It could have spun anywhere. Fortunately, didn't go in. We conceded the corner. The corner comes in, and Jack Butland comes out to try and punch it clear. Hits off the top of his hand, just down by the knuckle area, and then bounces back the way and into the goal. And Jack Butland, for me, Grant, is there's some question marks over him now, some proper question marks in terms of what's happened. We're talking about a goalkeeper that was getting touted for a move for £11 million this time last year. He needs to be able to rediscover some form, because the other side of that coin, for me, when looking at Butland and his entire performance last night, was he made some absolutely fantastic saves. So it's just so disappointing to see someone who's obviously had injury layoffs. He did obviously play against Fraserburgh, but we need to be able to get back him to where he was, because he absolutely is a game changer. The challenge that we've got for him at the moment is, it feels to me like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back with him. He can have a relatively solid game, and then at some point later on he can be prone to an error. This one last night was absolutely massive. And whilst I'm not saying, and I genuinely mean this, there was periods of the game last night for me where either team looked very likely to score, and Butland did play his part in being able to keep that scoreline what it was and keep Rangers in the game. But this was just so disappointing to see an OG from a corner that, by and large, I would just expect him to deal far, far better with.
At the time, so first viewing, I had expected to see that he had been blocked off completely, and his jump has been impacted, and he's not been able to get up properly, and that is how the situation has led to him completely misjudging his punch. Again, I don't want to sound too harsh on him because, like, I've mentioned the save he made from Diallo. There's a couple of saves he made from Garnacho, save from Fernandez at 0-0. So, as you said, kept us in the game, was making big saves when we were starting to come under a bit of pressure. But there is no legislating for an error like that. It undoes all the hard work that you've put into the game going up to that stage. And look, I think what we need to mention, otherwise we are doing a bit of injustice, is how bad the mistake Yilmaz made, not once but twice, leading up to the corner, because he gives the ball away cheaply, gets it back, gives it away cheaply again, which leads to the Fernandez opportunity. But you can't make an error in a game like this, where it was poised in terms of the game, and expect to come away from the game with anything positive, because the game at that point, you were starting to get into the area of something special or something of a mistake is going to decide this game either way. And for it to happen like that, again, I'm going to use the word frustrating. I'm going to use the idea of it being a gut punch, because you've performed well, you've performed admirably up to this stage to keep it at 0-0, because the tide was going against us and had been for the past 20 minutes. Something I never thought I would label Jack Butland, Cammy, and I don't know if you think this is fair or not, is that he's starting to look like a confidence player, which in a goalkeeper gives me the fear, because you can't have a goalkeeper who is only having good games when he's confident. Especially at Rangers, you need a goalkeeper who's going to be fully concentrated, because there's going to be games where you only really have one or two saves to make. Now, last night was never going to be that sort of game, of course, but you need them to concentrate in these big moments. And the body of evidence that is starting to build up against Jack, and whether or not we can say definitively it came after that rumoured England call-up and the game where Gareth Southgate came to watch him in the 3-3 Old Firm derby at the tail end of last season. Something has changed within Jack Butland, and again, without wanting to sound too harsh on him, you can start to see bits and pieces of why he's been a goalkeeper that hasn't been able to find first-team football for a good number of years at the moment. Now, there is a really good goalkeeper in Jack Butland. There is a number one goalkeeper in Jack Butland for teams down in the Premier League, never mind a club like ours. He needs to rediscover that form. He needs to rediscover it quickly. Otherwise, he's going to find himself in the position where he was before he came up to the club, and that is being a third-choice goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. I think you're right about the confidence aspect, for what it's worth, and I do understand that is going to be incredibly challenging, given the fact that you're the last line of defence. And also, there's a frustration I feel amongst the people that I've spoken to because of how well he has performed and what we know he can do when he's absolutely on his game, and he is absolutely of this level and he can perform in these games. But yeah, as I say, a very sore one to be able to take last night. The bottom line is he has to shrug it off, and he has to be able to recuperate and recover his mentality well enough, because, again, like you say, we've not only got Tannadice on Sunday, but we come into the last games of these group phases next Thursday, and that is very, very important as well. Just coming back to the game, Grant, some good back and forth in terms of Rangers and Man United chances as well. And 70 minutes, Cyril Dessers comes on for Bijrami. Czerny has also gone off at this stage as well, replaced by Finlay Curtis. Looks like Czerny had went off with a potential hamstring injury. The Bijrami replacement was tactical and, as far as I'm concerned, long overdue. And Dessers started to kind of express himself. Now, I'm going to cover what I think surmises Cyril Dessers in, a perfect form. Now, there's a chance that he's created by Bailey Rice, who's a lovely chip over the top. Dessers is unlucky to try and get the chip away, clips the outside of the post. However, on replay, he was offside. There was another opportunity where he gets onto a fairly loose ball, and there seems to be some unnecessary tussling with Harry Maguire. What I thought he was originally trying to do was get the ball into the byline, stop the ball before it went out, and then look to be able to create an opportunity. If he can get the penalty off Maguire, then we're sorted. But it wasn't going to be given, because I think, like you say, the two of them were going for the ball equally. Mm-hmm. Bowling goes out for a by kick, so I've no idea as to why I didn't just at least try to touch it to, retain possession of the ball. But cometh the hour, cometh the man. And on the 88th minute, a beautiful long ball through by James Tavernier finds Cyril Dessers behind Harry Maguire. And again, I'm going to give credit to that man, McCoy, because I think he noticed it before I did. But there was an exquisite trap for Dessers' first touch to bring the ball under control, a 180 spin, and the touch has set the ball up for him perfectly. He lashes home the shot, and he goes from, the incredulous to the incredible. In the 18 minutes of being on the park at this point. It is Cyril Dessers. It's why we've spoken about him so much across the course of this season. From a personal level, I was absolutely delighted for him, because you could see how much that goal meant to him. And I think you actually see how much the goal and the result meant to him when the Fernandes winner goes in later on, because the camera went on to Dessers, and you could tell he was gutted like every other Rangers player in there, because he would have loved to have been the one that got a point at Old Trafford for Rangers. But this goal is just, it is sublime. And if you take it out of context, if you remove Rangers and you remove Cyril Dessers from it and you put that in a goal show, you're saying that's probably one of the best goals that's been scored in the tournament so far this season.
Cammy, there's not going to be many a better goal scored in the tournament going forward. Never mind I'm not wanting to oversell this. I'm not wanting to hype it up beyond what it actually is. But the way that you have described the goal, I can't describe it any better. To take a touch like that with the ball coming over his shoulder and the defender's shoulder as well, to take it on the turn and to hit it like that is incredible technique. And if you were to put a top striker in that position, names akin to like Lewandowski, if it was Ronaldo, if it was Suarez or Benzema, that goal would be plastered wall to wall across social media, across goal shows, across highlight reels, and just would be talked about so much. And this is where the frustration comes, because he is capable of things like this. He really is. But he's capable of not controlling the ball properly, as you described only 10, 15 minutes before this. And this is where the frustration comes. I do feel for him. You could see he was crestfallen when that Fernandes goal went in. He's 2 minutes away from becoming a cult hero, Cammy. We have quite a few cult heroes at our club. Some for some incredible individual and team achievements. Some for very, very little. Sometimes he's 2 minutes away from becoming a cult hero, because that result, and if we were to get a result on the back of that goal, it's certainly up there in terms of like best performances like earned by a goal. I don't know if I've explained that properly or not, but you know what I mean. That idea of it, a player like that, because of the sort of indifference that he has with the support, with his own performances, to then pull that out of what seemed from nowhere, it would have just elevated him such highly within the support.
There's a part of me that's a bit sceptical towards that. I'd be willing to accept he might become a cult hero if that goal got us a £10 million fee for him, if he was to go somewhere else. But I'll be honest with you, I think people have travelled the Dessers road for long and weary. So, yeah. But listen, what will be, will be. As we know, and we've mentioned a couple of times, Fernandes, it does get was proven to be the winner on the 92nd minute. JFD just totally unaware of the Fernandes run behind him. And it's a point proven, Grant, that, if you do have that lapse of concentration, just for seconds, just, lose that focus, you're going to get punished for it. It's a fantastic ball in for Fernandes. He just needs to be able to get contact on it, which he does. What I think was interesting, though, and I know that we've seen and heard a lot for the fact that Rangers fans were in and amongst the home end. I think we took, at last count, about 40,000 down to Manchester, even though we only had a 3,500 allocation, but there was plenty in the home end. I think you saw the celebrations from the Man United fans. They likely get into the game, felt confident in terms of the golfing class. However, I can tell you they were absolutely sweating after that Dessers goal, and it was relief when Fernandes was able to get the winner. It is absolutely a gut punch for us. My hope is that Jeff Day learns from it. I don't want to use it as a stick to hit him with. It was frustrating, and it's part of the reason as to why I'm sure that the staff, the players, everybody, all of us listening to this are so, crestfallen, as you said earlier on about Dessers. But Jeff Day can't allow this to impact what he's going to be doing from here on in. He's going to be utilised. There's absolutely no doubt around that. He needs to be able to shrug it off and, again, similar to Butland, just put the mistakes behind him and focus on moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The only issue is that that's two now. If you were to include the Halliday goal in the League Cup semi-final, same thing. Gets caught ball watching, doesn't know where his man is, and you don't want that to become a body of evidence against him for there to be a stick to beat him with, because his performances in whole this season have been one of the positives in our season. He looks a great find. I know it is only his second full professional season as well, having come from Cyprus. So look, there is that. He is only 21. He does have to learn, and hopefully that is something that gets cut out of his game. I think for me, and again, this is something that an opinion I've gained in hindsight, having watched the game back. It goes to what I was saying earlier on in the first half, where Martinez and Yoro were given too much time in the ball. They were able to come forward with it. Who puts the cross in? Too much time in the ball. And the one thing that didn't hurt us, or Man United didn't do in the first half when these crosses were coming in the box, is they didn't have runners at the back post. Either if it was Zirkzee, he was trying to hang back, or he would be eased off the ball easily by Balogun and Proper. Ahmad didn't attack the back post. Fernandes wasn't making these runs in the first half. He was putting it a little bit deeper. Eriksson, where he was putting it a little bit further forward, didn't make these runs. So it wasn't something that actually hurt us, even though Man United did put in more than a few decent crosses into the box. It's the one time they have a runner, and it's the one time it kills us, because, and look, I know it's not at the same level, but how, and I'm going to use a bit of an older example, but how many goals did a player like Frank Lampard, for example, score because he makes that run at the box where he just goes completely unnoticed, gets a goal?
Yeah, it's football intelligence.
It absolutely is. Fernandes sees the fact that everyone's paying attention to the ball. He's blindside of Yefty, so he knows that if he makes that run, there's a good chance that if the ball evades everyone in the middle, it's going to land at him. All he has to do is make the right connection. Similar to the Yilmaz chance, Cammy, in a degree, he goes with the side foot, he makes sure he gets the connection. Maybe the only difference is he goes low rather than high. And at that point, he leaves Butland no chance. And probably on the full game, the way that the game had went, you may be thinking it's a deserved win for United. But at that point, it is just gutting because you're, 2 minutes away from earning what would have been a really well-earned but really valuable point in terms of a top 8 push for us. Yeah, it's just gone.
Yeah, but listen, again, a valiant performance, and the fact that we're coming away from Old Trafford disappointed with conceding a last-minute winner, it goes beyond my expectations before the game, Grant. Just as we quickly wrap up last night's game, we cannot fail to mention how well some of those youth players did when they came in. Discussed about Bailey Rice, Finlay Curtis. I thought playing a little bit out of position. He's been absolutely banging them in for the youth teams and very much deserves his call up to the first team squad. Deserved to get onto the park last night as well. Zach Lovelace would have come on. He was stripped and ready to go just immediately prior to the Dessers goal. And once we then decided, actually, we don't need to go for it any longer. We can replace Lovelace with King. King came on for Ridvan Yilmaz. And you made a great point earlier on as well about some of the players, not just necessarily youth players, but we do have a young team that's within. You look at guys like Jeffy, Hamza Egaman as well. I've got to give the manager credit. He hasn't been overly popular across the course of the season for justifiable reasons, and I think that's absolutely right. However, I do have to give him massive credit for the fact that he made those calls last night to bring on these young guys and set them with the mentality of, don't get overawed, please don't get phased, play your game, don't, deviate from what got you into this position in the first place and go on and express yourself. And for those players in particular, I'm delighted at their opportunity last night.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And sometimes these opportunities come because of the misfortune of others. It is just the nature of football, Cammy, that very seldom do these opportunities actually get handed to players because of the way that they're playing in the youth teams, because of the way that players are performing for the first team. It is often due to injury, and that unfortunately has been the case. But for these players, they then have to step up. They have to prove that they now belong in the Rangers first team setup. And as I mentioned when discussing specifically about Bailey Rice, Finlay Curtis as well has done himself absolutely no harm in justifiably banging down the manager's door, looking for minutes in the first team moving forward. And I think when you see performances like last night, and again, I don't want to go over the top, Cammy, because we will be doing these players an injustice if we were to hype them up beyond where their ability is. As much as there is a real level of talent there for them, I think it just highlights the frustration in persisting with players who don't have the upside that these players will have. Yes, they're young. Yes, they're going to make mistakes, but the upside in putting them into opportunities like this in the league, in the cup, is much more valuable than giving players minutes who we know are going to offer next to nothing or nothing at all. And you can name quite a few names in that category as to players who I'm meaning. But going forward, we need to be giving these players those level of minutes because, one, upside is there for them to get them in terms of the progression. But two, they thoroughly deserve it.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's all fair and unbiased as well. So we'll have to see as to what the manager is looking to do in terms of including them going forward, and he's going to have an opportunity to do that on Sunday, Grant. As Rangers, hopefully, there won't be any weather impact, but we'll be travelling to Tannadice to take on Dundee United at 12 o'clock on Sunday. As we've discussed already, we'll have to assess where the injuries are. I think that is going to be able to take its toll. It would not surprise me to see Clinton and Ciala back into the squad. We'll have to assess the situation regarding Czerny, because I'm assuming that he would have been starting as well. Mohamed Diomande obviously back available for selection, so that will hopefully minimise the Barron miss. Going on the assumption that he won't be able to make the squad. It's going to be a tough one. Second place, third, there's 10 points difference. We've used this word a lot throughout the course of this season in terms of being able to try and approach our away games and being able to right the form of our away performances. But again, I've got to see this as an opportunity to say, take the positives away from your performances at Old Trafford. Go and express yourselves. Go and win your individual battles. Dundee United will be incredibly motivated for this. Similar to Aberdeen, whenever they play Rangers, it feels like it's their cup final. Tannadice is a tight park. Rangers will need to go, and we will need to go and we will not be given an easy ride of it. So it's going to be important that we maintain a solid level of momentum to go and dominate in the game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Fixtures like this is where we far too often have come unstuck, especially this season. It's been the downfall of our season, our league aspirations. And at some point, the players need to turn it around, and you can't keep going, but they'll turn it around next game, so on and so forth, after yet another disappointing result. At some point, they need to put in the level of performance that is going to turn it around. And it's a huge opportunity for them, especially off the back of the performance last night, to sort of keep that momentum going forward. That's all you can ask the players to do in a season like this, is just keep the momentum going, win as many games as you can, and see where it takes you. There's no point looking at it any other way at the moment until something drastically changes in terms of league position, in terms of points gaps. There's no point looking at it any other way, in my own personal opinion. So it then falls down to the players in terms of, do you want to go out and perform the right way? Like, look at the Hibs game, for example. Cammy, excellent first 20 minutes, foot off the gas, and it costs us. That's what we need to avoid. If we are going to go to Tannadice and get a positive result, then we need to, first of all, start with that. Again, we should be starting or aiming to start every single league game, whether it be home, whether it be away, in exactly the same manner. But don't let it go, because at this present moment in time, this Rangers side do not have or cannot afford the luxury of trying to put in a 6 or a 7 out of 10 performance, because too often it falls below that standard. And that's where our troubles have come from. We need to be able to keep a high level of performance, a high level of attacking output, and put these games to bed. Otherwise, we're just going to be in the same position again.
Yeah, absolutely. That will do us this week on Extra. We will be back on Monday with David on the flagship to unpack the Dundee United game. And I will be back next Friday to unpack the USG game as Rangers play their final Europa League game in the group stages, and hopefully with many more to come. Last thing for me to do is to thank you all for listening this week. Thank you, our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, but also to thank my very special guest, Grant Sneddon, for coming on. Some great discussion, mate, and I think that we've done a fair crack given the sentiment at the moment around. We will be disappointed about the result, but we cannot be disappointed about the performance.
No, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for having me on, Cammy. And yeah, these discussions always have some degree of nuance to it and different perspective points. So yeah, we've done it justice, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you'd like to hear more from myself, Grant, and a whole host of other brilliant podders, please head on over to our Patreon site, patreon.com/heart and hand, where you get loads of great content every single day across all things Rangers, wider football, and even some non-football related content as well, usually in there for a giggle. We'll speak to you again on Monday, folks. Thanks again for your time. Bye-bye.